Okay, so now it just said recording in progress or something. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, thanks for having this, and it's really great to see. It's kind of funny because I'm looking at all these people that are on, and they're all sailplane owners, and they've owned more than me. But nonetheless, it's going to be a really cool thing to do. And so I put some questions together for our panelists. And so those of us who will be the panelists are going to be Dan Ryan, Jim Staniforth, Mike Kagoski, Bill Palmer, and if Dave Heffel shows up, Dave will also join us. So I'm kind of looking at the row of them. I think what I'll do is I'll basically start top row and kind of go from there. So what we're going to do is kind of a round robin. I've got some set questions here. We'll probably veer off and do a few things, that's as things go. But the idea is that each of the panelists will answer the questions kind of in a round robin fashion, and then we'll go on to the next one and just kind of see how it goes. We may not get through everything that I've set up, but that's okay. So the first question is, how many sailplanes have you owned, and what were the models? And also I want to add and what year did you first buy your first sailplane? So Dan Ryan.
I should have been more prepared for the first question. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 4 or 5 gliders that I've owned. The first glider I bought was a partnership on a HP-11 with a fellow that I used to work with. And I'll skip down to one of the other questions you have here, Tom. I would not recommend that glider. It's flaps only glider, and it was fortunately I had a lot of power plane experience, so it was not terrible, or not too terrible, I should say, but it had a lot of very unusual flying characteristics. The best thing it did was make me realize I really wanted to have my own glider and fly cross country and get further involved. I was kind of in the middle of a transition of getting back into gliding from flying power planes for a long time. So it was that's about the only good thing is it did was kick me into the soaring world better. The other gliders I've owned are SW20, which is a great glider, lots of them built. And I have a saying that they don't build a lot of bad gliders, or they don't build a lot of bad airplanes. So if you're looking for your first time glider, that's one thing to look at. Numbers count. Next glider I got was a 126, also built a lot of those, and that was purely for nostalgic reasons. It's just a lot of fun to fly. It's certainly not anywhere near the performance of ASW20. And then most recently, I should say, I bought an ASH31 MI, and that's a self-launching glider, and I'm enjoying it immensely. Could not have started with that glider. That would have been way too much glider.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a very complex glider, that's for sure.
Extremely.
But super high performance. All right, so the next on the row is Jim Staniforth, and you bought a few here and there yourself.
I'm a piker.
Muted, Jim.
You need to unmute, Jim. Still can't hear you.
I'm using. Okay. So the first glider I owned qualifies for the don't do this category. It was a KA6E, which I bought a third of before I figured out that the insurance company wasn't going to let me fly it because I didn't have a license yet. So this is one of the things that potential buyers have to think about, is things like the budget and the insurance and all of that kind of crap. But I've owned, the first glider I owned outright was an LS4A, which I had for about 7 years. And that's an amazing glider, a really easy glider for anyone to just jump in and learn to fly and not feel like the glider is holding them back. So that is one of the gliders that would be on my recommended list.
So how about the rest of them?
The rest of them, so I've owned an L13 Blahnik, which was a project I bought for about $5,000. Had to have a two-seater and it was good fun. ASW 17, Dan Gudgel and I were having lunch and just decided we both loved the ASW 17 and had to buy one of those. I owned an LS6A for 12 years. Really underrated glider. Very easy to fly. All of the LSs are very easy to fly. You just get in them and whatever you think it wants to do, it does. And then I moved from that to an ASW 27. And then from that, I had to sell that and go back to the LS6 again, but I bought a Nimbus 3 for $40,000. 60 to 1 for $40,000 is pretty good. And then did a self-launcher, an ASH 26. Certainly not anyone's first sailplane, but it was good fun. And it was way better than the DG800 that I was also looking at, which seemed to have lots of problems with vibration. But then couldn't afford any of that stuff, so I had to go back to an ASW 27, and it's just a lovely glider. The ASG 29, which one of the other participants is flying currently, Bill, is everything an ASW 27 ever wanted to be. And I think that you could actually fly that as your first glider. It's just $100,000 more than most people can afford. I've had a duo discus and I still have the duo discus. It's great fun to take people up in, and currently flying the 31 MI like Dan Ryan has.
All right, super, thanks. Next in the line is Bill Palmer. So an ASG 29, huh? What else you owned?
I started with an LS3, which got me out of the rental ships that just were kind of hard to go too far with because they didn't have anything in them. And I was looking for something kind of, and everything was far away, and there was no way to get a mechanic to look at anything. And Garrett Willett said, "Well, I got an LS3 here," and it was the right price. It was about $20,000, and for the guy, the previous owner's widow sold to me, and then so I got up through my diamond badge with that, and then I just couldn't keep up with my buddies in their ASW 27s, so I needed something faster, and there were no ASW 27s to be had, but Jim Stanforth had a beautiful ASG 29, and it was cherry, so now it's mine.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to fly Mitch Thompson's ASG 29, and yeah, what an amazing glider! And it made me realize just how difficult the Pick 20 is to fly, especially in landing and takeoff. So, but yeah, like I say, it's $100,000 more than I can afford, and so the Pick 20 is going to be what I fly. But that is awesome. Let's see, Mike Hagowski, can you read us?
Yes.
All right, so speaking of Pick 20s.
Yeah.
Now that wasn't your first glider though. Tell us what your first glider was.
My first glider was a Miller Tern.
Mm-hmm.
Bought it about 1985, the mid 80s. Had it for a few years. Flew it out of Crystal. Had a lot of fun in it. Can't think of a thing wrong with it that I wouldn't say, for somebody to get one. The first time I flew it was a piece of cake. Then I got that was many years ago. Then I had to leave soaring, and for about 35 years or more. And I finally got back into it, and I got a Pick 20B. And then I flew that. I got that in October of 2018. And then I still own it, but it's up for sale, and I bought a LS 18. Haven't flown it yet. Look to be flying it this Friday.
I bet you're having a hard time going to sleep at night waiting.
I can't wait.
Yeah, definitely. Outstanding. All right, so there's kind of the curriculum vitae of the panelists. So now getting back to it, just kind of briefly. So Dan, the next question: why did you decide to buy your own in the first place, and what characteristics did you think you wanted? And you got to unmute.
There we go. I was in the club. I was kind of did a transition, as I mentioned earlier, from flying power and power aerobatics mostly, and wanted to get current again. So I joined the Orange County Soaring Association, or Soaring Club, and I was flying their Blonics, I should say, and Globe 102 and 103 quite a bit. And I didn't like, I'd always had my own airplane. I'd never had been in a club before. And I really didn't like the fact that people were leaving the glider in conditions that I didn't particularly care for, and wanted my own ship. So one of the guys I used to work with had an HP-11. He was an old-time glider pilot, and asked him if he ever was going to get the HP-11 flying again. Well, he was having some health issues, so I became a partner in it, and that was our plan, was that he was going to teach me how to fly cross country, and had a motorhome, and we were going to have a good time. And his health issues, unfortunately, went much worse, and I ended up buying the whole glider because he passed away. That was the HP-11, and I enjoyed the HP-11. It was a very challenging glider to fly. It had some peculiar flying characteristics. Some of them were quite good. Some of them were really bad. But, I flew it a fair bit and was able to enjoy cross country. And that's really what kind of pushed me over the edge I really do want to do this. And I didn't have that much money into the HP-11. So I actually donated it to the Western Sailplane Museum down in Albuquerque, I think it's called. So I got a good tax write-off and got the glider out of the air. So it was when I was trying to sell it, all I was doing was getting first-time buyers that were very little experience, and it wasn't very much money, so they were attracted to it. They could get a great glider performance for the price of a 126, but I could tell they were not really capable of flying a glider, and that's all I was getting, was that type of tire kickers. And so I decided to just take it off the market, donate it, take the tax donation, and that's the end of that.
So you did the soaring world a favor by taking it out of the air.
Well, it was a beautifully built glider. It had been passed around a lot. Unfortunately, there's a misnomer that metal gliders can be left outside. That's not true at all. It was really suffering out at Hemet, being in the sun and the conditions, the rain and sun and everything. So it was taking its toll on the finish. And that one I didn't like. It was a real bear to rig every time. Matter of fact, I only rigged it once or twice. It took a lot of people. It was even worse it was the worst glider I ever rigged, actually. But I don't know. I guess I was doing people a favor by letting it go to a museum. And it was unfortunate because, like I say, it was actually extremely well built. It was just not a very good design by today's standards.
All right, very good. Yeah, thanks, Dan. So Jim, so why did you decide to buy your own sailplane? What characteristics did you think you wanted at that time? You're still muted.
I was in a club and got to fly their gliders and had done my 50-kilometer cross country in the club's gliders. But I watched other guys who were really stretching their legs a lot more and able to come to the airport and just rig and fly and do their own thing. And so I just decided to jump in with those guys and just have my own glider rather than the club's glider.
All right. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. Oops. Bill Palmer. So, what about you? Why did you decide to buy your own, and what characteristics were you looking for?
Yeah, well, like I said, the rentals, which didn't have any instruments in them besides an altimeter and a airspeed indicator. I wanted to stretch my legs a little bit. I've been flying around in circles for a couple decades, and didn't really realize there was cross country going on until somebody turned me on to that. And then, so I needed something that, I could actually do something in, that could put some instruments in and see what was going, and actually do some cross country stuff, kind of see what I could do. And I could, I was like, well, I can spend $50,000 maybe. And if the LS3 was available for 20, I put another 8 or so into it and had a pretty decent ship. I ended up putting a 3,000 hour inspection on it right away. I think 3,000 hours is how long it took to do it, not only just when it was due. But yeah, that was really good ship for me. It was 40-to-1 flaperons. It's got the heavy wings, so I had to have help to put the wings on until I had enough confidence to do it myself. Bought a good rigger instead of the kind of the home built one that it came with, and that made it easier. And yeah, I learned a lot in it. So it was a good glider. I just couldn't keep up with my other buddies, so I needed something faster.
Oh, real good. Okay. Let's see. Mike.
Yeah, I bought a glider. I'm probably going to refer more to the pick. It's really my first real glider and experience with doing things that I really wanted to do with it. So the Tern was it was a nice ship, but I didn't do a whole lot with it, and it cost me all of $1,500 in a partnership. So it was a great ship while I had it. But the Pick 20B I bought because both gliders, the Tern and the Pick, bought because I wanted to fly when I wanted to fly, and I wanted to go where I wanted to go and fly it where I wanted to fly. So, owning your own glider, you're the only restriction. So I bought my own glider. What characteristics? I wanted a machine that would go cross country. I wanted something as close to 40-to-1 as I could find, as close as possible. And then I just wanted a good basic glider. That's about it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. It's funny because I'm kind of looking at the questions that I put together, and what I'm finding is a lot of them are being answered kind of in the process of the first question. So we may kind of ad lib a little bit here, but because we kind of talked about why choose a particular sailplane as your first, and so I guess the key thing is among those sailplanes, let's say we heard from Dan that definitely would not recommend an HP-11 as your first sailplane. And I know, but for the folks that did, like Jim, for instance, you mentioned that you had an LS4A as your first. So tell us more about that as a first-time glider.
But the LS4 is just a really easy glider to fly. Just like the Discus, or I don't know, those are two that come to mind right away that are very easy gliders to fly and will perform really well. And you don't have to really think about what you're doing in them. You don't have to do much other than fly the way that you have been in other gliders before that. It's just that they will reward you with a better performance. And so the Discus or the LS4, I find really good as first time buys, because they're just very friendly flying machines.
Is the LS4 a standard class?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that definitely makes it simpler to step into. That's for sure.
Yeah, There are gliders that you can fly with that have flaps as a first time buyer, but it just seems very much easier to just leave that out of the equation, at least for the first year or so that you're flying, whether you keep that glider or not. The things like the LS4, the Discus, or similar gliders, the DG300, for example. Walt did 1,000K in a DG300, so it must really suck. But those gliders are actually quite good performance and very easy to fly.
All right, thanks. So let's see. And Mike, I guess in your case, would you recommend the Pick 20B with the unusual setup with the flaps and no spoilers to a beginner?
A beginner, well, define beginner. How many hours were they? I just saw. I was a beginner, I guess. I was beginning all over again after 35 years, and I bought the Pick 20B. I just looked at the flap thing as a challenge, and something to learn that would be good for me to learn. In the end, I learned it and got pretty good with it. Good enough to go cross country with it confidently. Yeah, I like the Pick. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that was it. I mean, that's basically it. I know personally myself, when I was looking at picks and whatnot, and for me, those flaps actually intimidated me. So I elected to go for a D just because it had, more standard die breaks. So that's props to you, guy.
Hey, Tom, it's Dan. One of the things, I went from HP11 directly to the SW20. So I went from flaps only to flaps and spoilers, and oh my God, was that lovely. My first flight in the 20 was, I flew for a couple hours and did a perfect landing. Everything about it was just heaven. So a lot of the, the earlier gliders that have flaps and spoilers are really, really nice. Like what Jim was talking about, some of the ones that he's flown.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's good to know. I know the one thing that happened with me, just kind of as an aside, is after, like I said, I mentioned flying the ASG-29 and then realizing just how challenging it is to fly the Pick well close to the ground, especially. Landing is, I don't know. I was comparing notes with Dave Heffel. If you don't do it just right, you drop in. And the wings like to drop very easily on takeoff. I always tell the wing runners, I need the fastest wing runner I could find, and they got to give me all they got, or I'm going to drop a wing, even with the flaps full negative. And on the landings, the same thing. I just can't keep the wingtips up. I go to full negative and the whole thing, and I start dragging the wing long before anybody else does. And so there's just a number of things that, where buying a more modern glider, I think, is a real plus, especially to someone who's buying their first, because they've ironed out some of the characteristics that can be a little wild and woolly in the earlier ones.
I might add something to about the Pick and the flaps. And the only real challenge that I found with the flaps was short landings. That took a lot of, that was a learning curve. The first time I ever flew a flap ship was the Pick. I landed it fine. I wasn't trying to land it short, or, I had a whole runway and I used it, and everything worked out just fine. And it continues to. I don't know that I have that wing dropping problem, only if I don't have negative flaps in. But the Pick seems to be, in my opinion, seems to be fine on a rollout and drops a wing about when it should.
Sounds like I need to upgrade my techniques.
Did we
Yeah,
learn?
Kathy asked about trailers.
Yeah, I was gonna say we'll get to some of these questions. Or Tom, you've got a couple more questions still to run through for the panel, or do you think we can?
Cousins, you're mute.
I was mute a second ago. Yeah, sorry
Okay.
about that. Yeah, I know it's kind of, I guess there are probably the things we probably should actually go, I think we've pretty well covered the kind of the nuances and whatnot. So I guess what I'd like to do is, if you remember that first time that you bought your first sailplane, what went right, what went wrong in the process, choosing, inspecting, purchasing, all the sort of things that, the good things that that happen and the pitfalls that happen too. This is, I think, a lesson learned for anybody that's going to buy another one. So Dan, how about you?
There we go. Let's see. There we go. Say the question again. What I was struggling with the muting. The pitfalls.
Yeah, so it's basically, what went right or what went wrong in the process of choosing and inspecting and purchasing and taking delivery. Were there things that happened that you got lucky or unlucky and things like that. Overall, what was it like to buy that first one?
Well, my circumstances with the first one was kind of unusual because the fellow was a good friend of mine and experienced with a glider. So it was, it was very easy. He showed me everything about it and essentially gave me the checkout on the ground as to how to fly it. So that part of it was very easy. When I mentioned the unusual flying characteristics, it had been the HP-11 I had been modified to a T-tail. And I never really liked the way the elevator worked. It only had about a 10 degrees of deflection in the elevator either way. And I ran out of elevator a lot in various situations, which was very unnerving, as you might imagine, especially on short final. But I think the thing I learned was, which I kind of already knew because I've been very involved with home built aircraft in the past. So when you're buying a home built, you're buying a prototype, and it's an inexperienced builder's prototype. So it's not. I would not recommend home built if you can, or at least a home built that is not. There weren't a lot of for your first glider. I know. Mike had a Turn, which is obviously a home built glider, but that's a little bit more of a benign glider than an HP-11. The thing I was going to mention though was when you're trying to pick your first gliders is deciding what it is you want to do. Do you want to fly local? Do you want to fly cross country? Do you want to fly a glider that you can grow into? Do you want to fly a glider that you're comfortable with right off the bat, that although you may end up outgrowing it, you may become bored with it after a while? I looked at buying a Blahnik back when I was in the club and thinking that would be a lot of fun. And after I flew one for a while, I still like it. They're a lot of fun to fly, but I realized I didn't want one as long as I had one in the club. So you evolve with what you want and what you want to do with it over time. I see some of the questions here about what size. 15 meters, great size. I've always said that the 15 meter standard class, 15 meter racing class is really, really a nice size of a glider with regard to wingspan. Tremendous amount of performance, and a lot of the first and second generation, or third generation for that matter, they're a little bit more expensive. But some of the better first and second generation gliders, glass gliders, great performance, great handling characteristics, great resale value, and a lot of them are still well supported by manufacturer. That's a really big thing to think about. Schleicher is a good example. Still in business, obviously, and they can get you any part you want or drawings for anything you need. Clear back to the early gliders even. So that's important to me, is having that kind of backup with your customer support.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
that was one of the things with the LS3. I had to buy a maintenance contract each year for them to talk to me.
Yeah.
In case I needed a part and stuff. You know, the other tip that somebody gave me, that's read somewhere, is you know, you're thinking about a glider, just sit in it and see how it fits. And that was good advice. When I was looking for to upgrade, a friend of mine had a Ventus that he was selling, and I sat in it, and it was way back, and I could hardly reach anything, and it was just like, oh man, you know, I don't have to put little tubes on the radio knobs. And then I sat in my buddy's ASW 27, and it just fit so nice. It just was like putting on an old shoe, you know. It was just my right size. Everything was in reach, and I was like, well, this is obviously. Then now I know what he meant by go sit in it. So you got to have something that's going to fit your body. You know, that the way you want to sit, the way you want to put your head, and how far you want to reach, and everything else. That was good advice.
Yeah, excellent. So I just saw the note there. So Amy Johnson is now Gulf Tango, and nice to have you with us there, Dave Heffel.
Am I unmuted here? Hang on.
You're fine. You're fine. You're on.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. I've been here the whole time, man. I just
Yeah.
I'm on my girlfriend's computer, so sorry. I didn't realize it was coming across as her username at first.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering. It didn't look like a female there, and so I kind of was thinking. I wonder who the heck
All
is
good.
that?
It's all good. I've been here the whole time.
So I've asked a lot of different questions, Dave. You got any comments or anything that stuck out that you wanted to, kind of answer?
No, there's been a lot of good advice, and I mean, I've only bought I'm on my second glider, so I don't have a whole lot of experience in, listen to some of all these gliders these guys have had on. My jaws dropped, really. Just I had no idea that some of these this crowd has had as many as they have. It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, truly. So I guess one thing is, I think I'll just kind of, rather than this round robin thing, which seems a little bit too formal, I'm kind of going through it here. But so among the panelists, like I say, I've heard people talk a lot about like the one thing that keeps on being mentioned is trailers. So guys, chip in on trailers. You want to, Dan, you want to start? Go ahead.
You need to buy a good trailer with a decent glider in it. You'll fly a whole lot more if you've got a good trailer. And so, and also if you need to get retrieved and you have a shitty trailer, you're going to have fewer people volunteering to come and get you. And part of the whole thing is just this, I will come and get you when you land out, and you come and get me when I land out. And if you've got a good trailer, everyone's going to help you when it's that time.
I heard it said, buy the best trailer you can afford and whatever glider comes in it.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common look.
Doug Fronius could be a good person to talk about that. He's got a fabulous glider, and I know he's looking for a trailer to go along with that fabulous glider. You want to talk about that, Doug?
Yeah,
I'll make him my panelist here. Free.
I just bought the LS8 818, and it's got the Cobra trailer, and I haven't really had the opportunity to use it, but just once, and that was when I bought it. We put it back in the trailer, took it out and put it back. But I mean, the difference between the PIC trailer and the LS trailer is night and day. I can't wait. The PIC trailer is pretty cumbersome. Works fine. It just it's 1975, 76.
So Dan threw me under the bus there, but I got my 20 some years ago, and it was a really nice airframe, and it had a kind of a crummy Eberly trailer, which was originally made for a LaBelle, so it fits really tight. And I thought, well, I should be able to find me a nice trailer to go with this airframe. And let me tell you, it's really hard to find a good trailer to buy on the used market, unless you really want to spend a lot more money than it's worth for the package. So the package will be a lot less expensive to buy the good trailer with the glider than to try to buy them separately.
Yeah, I
The
sure,
SW20 that I bought, it had a pretty good trailer. It was a Comet trailer. It was kind of an unusual story for it. It was not the original trailer for the glider. And I found out later that the trailer had been used as a shipping container. And it had made about 3 or 4 trips from Germany back and forth, bringing gliders over. And so when the gal that bought it, she had it converted back to a trailer, had to put an axle on it and turn it into a true trailer. And it worked really well. It's not as good as a Comet, but it was a pretty good trailer, and I was happy with it. It's certainly better than the HP11 home built trailer that I had. So it makes a big difference.
This is Doug. I'll just add one thing that's comical on trailers. I own or have owned 8 registered sailplanes. I think I own 6 of them right now. And only the 20 came with the trailer. Oh, actually, the Screaming Wiener came with the trailer. The 6 of them did not come with trailers. That's the vintage world, if you get in that world. So I've had lots of trailer experiences.
Another thing with trailers is I have found that about 20% of American glider owners do not have clear title to their trailer. So a new glider to you might come with a headache as far as the trailer is concerned. Even the trailer that Bill Palmer owns now, I had some trouble with because of the convoluted way in which the trailer was registered when I bought it. But I always clear up all of that stuff. It's just you would like the seller to clear up any problems with the title on the trailer. And this really is a big deal for someone who's buying their first glider. You don't want to be tripped up by a whole slew of things you have to do in order to get the trailer in your name.
Or yeah, I'm off mute. Or you just have one license plate and one registration.
Yeah, well, that's how you get in a shitload of trouble, because when you sell one of those trailers, then what do you do?
Yeah.
Oh, why do you ever sell anything?
And that's what happened to me when I bought my SW20. When I bought it, I was under the agreement that it would be delivered to me. And when it was delivered to me, they took the license plate off and they said, "Oh no, this doesn't go with this. This is my license plate from Pennsylvania that I got to send back to my buddy in Pennsylvania." Oh, well, okay, that shouldn't be any big deal. It was a huge deal going through the DMV, and they couldn't even figure out where the VIN number was on the thing. And I won't get into the long story, but it was a big deal to finally get all of the paperwork straightened out. And Jim's absolutely correct. That was a nightmare. And dealing with the DMV is never fun. Dealing with the DMV on a trailer is even worse than never fun.
Yeah, we had an open tube trailer that was actually a TG3 trailer that had no title or registration. We were going to use it for our TG2 and couldn't figure out how to register it, but we went to the DMV and told them that we made it. And they believed us and gave us a home built trailer registration and put an ID number on it, and it's registered. That probably won't work for a nice manufactured trailer.
Yeah, definitely not. Well, yeah, this Chevy is mine. Yeah, I built this Chevy. One thing I can say, as far as trailers are concerned, is the very first thing you do before you leave town from wherever you're buying that trailer is you go straight to a tire dealer and get new tires. Don't trust whatever they say. Buy new tires.
Yeah, they'll always tell you the tread is in great shape, but tread never wears out. It's age that counts.
Well, gents, it's about 8:49 going on 8:50. This has been a really helpful conversation. I'm going to jump back to some comments and questions that I've seen popping up. And Doug, I really like the comment you made about choice of a glider, and I'm just going to read out loud what you typed in here. It says, buy something that fits with the group you fly with for support and help. If everyone you know flies a 126, then buy one. If a glass, then buy one. It's buy one of those, known for easy handling. I would say we've had the conversation about trailers. I say trailers are very important. Good trailer is critical, but I just like that comment you made about, if you got a group of people and they fly a certain type of ship, and those are the people you're going to be flying around with, I'm sure it makes sense to be in support with people who know that plane. So when you say, hey, can you help me put my wings on? They're like, oh, I don't know. But if they know exactly how that goes, then that's it makes life easier for sure. Let's see, there was another comment here. Good comment from John Chapman. Some new buyers might not realize that the average annual expenses usually run 10% of the purchase price. Insurance, annuals, ADs, electronic updates, tires, brakes, paint, and the odds repair. Pretty soon, those odds all add up to real money. So that's definitely something in your list of how much is this really going to cost. Definitely, that's a good comment there, John. There was a question, I think, from Doug Bailey. Oh, and he's asking about avionics. Certainly, older ships have older avionics. I think a lot of folks just, start upgrading their avionics. Is there any comments the panel would like to say a quick brief comment about avionics? I know that could be a whole different nice topic, I guess, but.
Oh yeah, I'll be glad to. As far as I'm concerned, I wound up replacing my entire panel. I had an old Cambridge which sort of worked, and an old obscure radio which sort of worked, and all that kind of stuff. And so just everything was basically junk. And so I bought a panel blank and put in all new, put in clear nav and a LX3 Vario and so forth and so on, all the good stuff, and a Becker radio. And yeah, it cost a lot of money, but I figured if it was going to be, this is probably the last glider I was going to own. So, and there's no way I was going to get it out of it again, but that's okay. It's the glider I want. And so I'm happy that I did what I did. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you definitely want to look at the avionics suite that's in it if it's a bit older, and be ready to make some changes.
Right.
Yeah, Tom, I upgraded everything on my SW20, but I did it all with used stuff. And, you can go along behind the guys that are buying the latest and greatest and get the next, last year's model for a significantly cheaper price. And, I ended up tricking out my SW20 pretty nicely by doing that. So you can save a lot of money and hassle.
Yeah,
Well,
on that
thanks.
subject, I run a glider classified website, glidersource.com, that has a lot of used avionics and stuff on it. So check that out, glidersource.com.
Well, thanks to Dan, actually, I wound up getting my Becker radio really cheap. It was one of those, one of the European ones where they couldn't be used anymore in Europe. And he was actually came out of a pit special from the aerobatics forum and whatnot. So that was one thing where I did get a used item. So, but.
Yeah, I've been buying a lot of European radios that were being dumped, but at the moment that whole wave is over. So if anybody's looking at getting those deals that we got a couple of years ago, forget it. They're all done now.
Yeah, I just bought one, Jim, just the other day though, for the 126. It was a little diddle radio. It was a little on the pricey side, but if you go on to eBay is where I found mine, and it was somebody in Cologne, Germany.
You're undermining Bill.
Oh, excuse me. I shouldn't do that, Bill. I'm going to be selling something real soon, and I need to use your website. I promise.
Doesn't matter to me. Just
Since we're talking about flight computers, Walt chimed in with a comment here that the SSA webinar program, February 18th, next week. They'll be talking about flight computers, PDAs, and Varios. So check that out. Also, Cumulus Soaring, Paul Remdy is having a webinar on the Navitor, the new ODN on February 12th. So go to your SSA website and look for the webinars.
Hey, Jim, would you talk about the XC Vario? Your experience with that? That's a really good choice.
Oh, this thing. Let's see. I bought a couple of these just as an experiment, and they're great little Varios. It costs less than 400 euros, and they keep updating the firmware on this thing. And we've been very happy with them. They connect via Bluetooth. Better tell it to, there we go. So we got these little Varios.
Closer to the camera, Jim, we couldn't see it. There you go.
Your background is, oh, there we go.
Yeah, it's there just next to the pyramid of Kefren. These little Varios are quite good, and they connect via Bluetooth to your favorite telephone, and have been a really nice little backup system. We installed one in Kathy Foch's Discus, and it runs the UDI, whilst she has a ClearNav Vario that runs with the ClearNav display. Whole completely separate system. So this is a really inexpensive way of upgrading a panel to something that communicates via Bluetooth to something as simple as software on your telephone.
Okay, great. Thanks for all those tidbits on panel and panel upgrades. Let me see if I caught anything. Oh, there's another good comment here, of course. Reading the notes in the logbooks very carefully. They will indicate if there are any unresolved issues. That's kind of seems like a no-brainer, but certainly glad that that was brought to our attention, because certainly, logbooks tell the whole story, right? So certainly.
That's actually not necessarily true.
Oh, really? Well, that's true.
Logbooks don't
If they haven't,
necessarily tell the whole story at all.
At all, you're right. That's a good point. Good point, Tom. They're only putting in what they want you to see on the logbook, right?
Yeah.
However, I have turned down the purchase of a glider due to the fact that the logbook said absolutely nothing. And if they can't be bothered to put things in the logbook, what else have they been not bothered to do is always my question. They can fake things, but if they haven't done anything, they've not faked the fact that they're lazy.
Well, it's kind of like when I bought, used cars, I say, hey, can I take it to my mechanic? And if they question that, then it's a no-brainer, no deal. So can you ask AI to come before the purchase? AI would come and do an inspection? Is that being unfair to the seller?
Now, I've run into a couple of recent sales of gliders that I'm not going to mention any names, but people who have not been able to actually look at the glider themselves, and who have had somebody else look at it for them. That person, if you're going to do that, must be someone that you, as the buyer, trust implicitly. There can be no question about, is this person going to tell you what the seller wants you to do? Because one of these people used the mechanic that had done the last few annuals on the glider for the seller, and that mechanic is not going to tell you that he screwed up an inspection.
Right.
So you have to find somebody who you trust implicitly if you're unable to do the inspection yourself.
Very good point, Jim. Thank you.
I see a comment from Chris about if you buy a standard airworthiness ship, how painful is it to modify the panel? And I think in terms of legality or whatever, it was kind of an interesting thing, because when I did all mine, I was working with Jeff Byard, who is an IA, And the main thing that they're concerned about is just the instruments that make the aircraft safe. So you can put all kinds of navigational stuff in, and it's not a factor. It doesn't interfere with the standard airworthiness.
Good to know. Thanks, Tom. Let's see. I think we've covered most of the questions that came up. Feel free to unmute yourself if I missed your question and you still are aching to have that question answered. Just go ahead and it looks like here's a good comment from Kathy Fosha. Put a label inside the door of the trailer to indicate the last time the wheels and bearings were packed. Nice little tip there, Kathy. Thank you.
So one other thing that comes up is everybody starts shopping for things and then they find things that are a little bit out of their budget. I think you've got to watch that. And I'm not really, this is do as I say, not what I do. I usually buy something that I can't afford and then just try and figure out how to deal with it later. But for most people, don't push your budget too far because you may end up not being able to afford to fly it. And always look at what the cost of maintenance and what the cost of insurance is going to be before you buy your first sailplane, because after you've had a first sailplane, you'll have a bit more of an idea of those things. But when you're buying your first sailplane, you have zero idea what all this maintenance and insurance and everything is going to be. So look into that before you commit to something.
Insurance is a very interesting subject. It turns out most of the insurance agencies buy the aircraft every 20 years. What's that mean in English? You're going to pay 5% of the purchase price approximately per year for insurance.
Good point there, John. Thank you. John, you had a comment earlier on that I was going to say for later, which is now. I'm just trying to scroll down and find your question or comment there.
Way up near the beginning.
Yeah. There it is. The pros and cons of private ownership. How about the pros and cons of private ownership versus leaseback owner? Over 40 years, you have owned 7 leaseback ships and 1 private. Can you
Well,
panel?
Sure. The amusement of owning a private ship is it's your pride and joy. A leaseback ship is not your pride and joy. It's a rental truck.
Right.
Okay, people will ding it, scratch it, not do what you would, barf on the cushions, you name it. But if it's done right, you can do fair on it. I bought a Grove 103 in 1983. I still have that ship. And that ship has paid something like $250,000 in revenue to me. And it cost 27 grand.
Nice.
You have to be patient. It took 40 years to make that kind of money. Most of the ships on leaseback pay for their insurance, they pay for their annuals, and they might pay a little bit of profit if it's a very popular ship. 2-seaters do very well on leaseback. Single-seaters, not so good. Though surprisingly, I rented an open ship, a LAC 12 on leaseback for 15 years. A lot of people enjoyed it, including me. It's flown in a fair number of places. One of the comments made by somebody was the buy-sell operation is tricky. When I sold that LAC 12, I'm a flight instructor. I offered to check the 2 guys out who were buying it in detail, walk them through the manuals, ride them around in 2-seaters, et cetera, et cetera. They said, no, we don't need any of that. Long story short, they wrecked it the first flight. Totaled it. Didn't hurt themselves, but totally aircraft. So it's not easy to convince prospective new owners. I think Dan Rinn made an intelligent comment. There are times when, I'd rather not sell this to that particular individual for whatever reasons. If the back of your neck is saying no, don't do it. As far as the different ships go, the LS4 was a private ship. And that was a joy to fly. Roland and Schneider had got it perfect. All of their ships, same sort of thing. They're all lovely ships to fly. Great conversion ship if you're coming out of something else as your basic trainers. The two-seaters are picked because in the US on commercial leaseback, you need to have a standard type certificate. It turns out single-seaters, you don't need a commercial certificate. The LS12 or the LAC-12, excuse me, was experimentally registered, but you can use it as a commercial leaseback. The rest of them, it's a matter of taste. Some of the ships I kept 1 year, some of the ships I've kept almost 40 years. The key to the whole leaseback world is the community that's controlling it. In other words, your fixed base operator. Larry and Jane over the years have been very reliable about checking out people, making sure they're well qualified and all the rest of it. Very little issue there. Crystal, different story. The sister ship to my DG 1000, a local guy tricked it out in GoPros and wrecked it totally in the mountains one fine day. And then he put the whole damn thing on TV. It's Plastic Surgeons of Beverly Hills. Right down to showing the in-flight stall and mushing into the ridge top, destroying the aircraft. When it touched, it broke the wings in the back of the aircraft. But the boys weren't hurt. They waited and filmed the rescue helicopters. What can I say? But again, the people that control the lease aircraft can do a great job or an awful job. Places like Sundance Aviation in New Mexico took care like their firstborn of all their leaseback ships. They did a great job. Many people do good jobs, and other people, well, if you got the money, I'll rent the ship to you. It's that simple. And that's not the way it should work. So if I were going to say anything at all about leaseback, it's pick your leaseback managers carefully.
Okay, John, well, that's good to know, and we'll take that as advisement. I just want to kind of start wrapping things up. There was a couple of good quick comments from Mark Grubb. He says, for inspections, have someone who is dispassionate expert in that particular make or model to inspect it. Prospective buyers are very unlikely to know who to look for. And then he went on to say, buy glass gliders indoors under fluorescent lights and sell them outdoors in daylight. Finished condition. Finished condition is the crux of buying any glass ship. So good, nice little comment there. Thanks, Mark. Let me see. There's a couple more messages coming in.
I like Kathy Focha's comment about labellas. That's one thing that no one's mentioned that, but labella, I think, would probably be a marvelous first-time ship. And there are people who've owned them for years and years and years and just fly them. They are wonderful handling gliders. But then I think about Bill Palmer's comment about sitting in them. And I flew one, and while it was a great glider to fly, I didn't fit. And so when I sat in the pick, everything just fell to hand, and I realized that was my glider. But yeah, I totally agree. The Labella is just a beautiful ship, very honest handling, and great one to start with.
Yeah, that's one that's been commented for poor choice for me, partly because I'm a pretty thin-framed guy, and the cockpit's not exactly a roomy cockpit in a Labelle. But so I'm definitely having my eyes on considering a Labelle just for the same reasons, and plus the fact that I just think it's a beautiful ship. It's just really pretty.
It's a lovely glider to fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing that it's kind of an aside to what John Chapman was saying is not leaseback, but just a partnership with somebody else. If you get a friend who you can go in half with on a glider, you can then buy twice the glider that you thought you could buy. And you also have a built-in crew for when you land out.
Good point. Yeah.
But it's also like having a new partner in marriage. Be very careful who you pick for partners.
No, that's why I said friend.
Hopefully they're still your friend a couple months later. Well, I think that's about time for us to maybe wrap it up. just really want to thank all the panel and Tom for putting this all together, and for all the insights from the cast and crew. And as always, it's always just really a pleasure to see this clan of soaring pilots coming up to joining us on the Zoom conversations. It just kind of like, and having an old crew of people who know what they're talking about, and just, you really add a lot to my world of understanding this whole sport. It's really just pleasure to hear all you guys and just hear both the stories and the insights and all the smart decisions you've made. So I guess for now we'll say adieu, and please come back in 2 weeks. Bill Palmer will be giving us some additional new insights on preparing and looking at weather and reading the charts. So we'll be looking forward to what Bill has to offer. And again, Bill gave us a little tidbit on people looking for panels in avionics. You're scrolling down to find it. What was it again, Bill?
The website?
Yeah, your website. Yeah.
Porch.com.
Yes. Yeah. And he's also got a wonderful website of lots of other videos and helpful information just in general. So.
Oh yeah. So the other webpage I put together mostly for my students and just to share less stuff is called thesoaringpage.com. So it's got, I don't know, 100 and some resources on there right now. My students seem to like it. It's got everything from YouTube videos to FAA books and everything else. So
yeah, no, it's a great site. Thanks.
Something, a page of links and other things to share. Try that out. And if you find something that's not on there that should be, let me know.
Yeah, great. I appreciate that very much. Okay, folks. Well, again, thanks for joining the ABC Sports Chat, and stay safe, fly safe, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Cheers.
Adios.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks,
So
Dan.
long,
Thanks,
everyone.
Bill. Thanks, Tom. Thanks,
No
everybody.
problem. It
Take
was
care.
great fun. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Good job, Tom.